Good morning. Right, we're going to get started. We've started the recording because obviously some people will be unable to join us now. The main thing to say though is that as soon as we possibly can, we want to get you in to see what we're doing with well, with school in general, but certainly with ELS. So whilst we're doing this, it's kind of a stopgap until we can get you in to have a look at the resources, see what's happening in class, and see what your children are accessing. We will send out, so there'll be some links that we'll talk about to some of the sounds, the clear sound making. There'll be some links to the ELS materials and some information about Oxford Owl that we'll talk about later on. So all of those things will be sent out along with the slides that Mrs. Coates is going to talk you through now. So without further ado, the screen should be shared. So I think I'm probably just small on your screen, probably the best thing. Mrs. Coates is going to talk us through the slides, and then at the end, about 20 minutes, I would think, we'll stop sharing the screen because there's some resources that Mrs. Coates is going to share with you. And then if there's any questions that people have got, we can add those in. I'm going to try and watch on my phone on mute, so if there's any problems, if you pop a message on, I might be able to see it at the side. Okay, but we shall sanitize the sharing chair, and I shall move out your way. There you are. And you might be a bit high. So.
I'm just going to try and get onto this chair because it's really high. I might. Oh, here I am. Right, good morning, everybody. What I'm going to do, there's a slideshow that you should hopefully be able to see. I'm going to go through the slideshow, but I'm not going to read it word by word because you can clearly read it yourselves. But I will talk about different things. And as Mr. Firth said, at the end, I'll do a little session where we can have a like more of an interaction talk, and if you've got any questions, if anything I've talked about, just jot it down as I'm going through, and then at the end I'll try and answer as many questions as I can about them. So I think, do I just scroll down?
Yeah,
oh yeah, it's working. I'm in action. You'll have to bear with me because I'm not that technical. So obviously, as a school, we have invested in the programme of ELS, which stands for Essential Letters and Sounds. And it's a really good programme because as well as having all of the really good resources that come with it, the books that we send home to your children match with this scheme. So it's a whole all-round package, basically. So you'll have heard of the word of phonics. You'll have heard of phonics ever since your child's joined school. And basically, Essential Letters and Sounds is a way of delivering phonics. We teach phonics every single day, and it starts right from the beginning in nursery, and I'll give examples of that later. And basically, this programme is all about getting your children ready to be able to read. And our aim as a school is that all children can read, and all children can read fluently. So we need your help at home to be able to achieve that. So today, I'm hopefully going to talk you through the different strategies and things that we use in school. And then hopefully your children will be showing you those at home, and you'll be able to build on those and use those with your own children at home as well. One of the key things, obviously being a teacher, one of my friends and my family, one of the first things they always ask me about when they're trying to teach their children to read is they say things like, well, what's phonics? What's phonics? And in a nutshell, the most important thing I feel about phonics is pronouncing the letters and pronouncing the sounds cleanly. So there's been a video attached, I believe, in Facebook or Google.
Yes, on the website, and we'll share the link at the end.
So that link will be reshared. So if you haven't had the opportunity to watch the video, which is all about saying sounds clearly and cleanly, I really would advise that you watch this, because so commonly people, and it's obviously not, they're just trying to help, but they often put a schwa on the end of their letters. So they'll say k, a, t, and it's this sound on the end of it. Whereas once we teach the children and you as parents to take that off, it just makes reading so much more accessible for the children. So instead of going k, a, t, you would go k, a, t, and it just, that nice clean sound, it just helps the children to blend. So you'll see some examples of that today. And as I say, there is a really good video for you to watch at the end. So phonics, as I said, begins right in nursery, and it's all about pronouncing words and learning that letters are associated, and groups of letters are associated with sounds. So piece of information for you. There's actually 44 main sounds in the English language. So obviously we're aware of the alphabet and being 26 letters, but there's 44 sounds, and that's something I'm going to show you by how they're represented by a grapheme. So that's the written way of seeing the sound. Here's some more terms that your children are able to use and you may use, but here's some definitions nice and clearly for you. So a phoneme is the single sound in the word. So the example I gave before about k-at, those are 3 sounds there, k-at. But if I was to do something like the word fish, it would be ish. That would again be 3 phonemes, 3 sounds, but the sh would be made up of 2 letters. The grapheme is the written letter of the sound. So in that example of sh, that would be the grapheme of s and making the sh sound. A digraph is when there's 2 letters making 1 sound. So that was the perfect example there with sh being the digraph. And a trigraph is when there's 3 sounds. So one of the ones your children will be learning right from the beginning, which is when they're in reception, is the I as in night. So that's 3 letters, ik, making the I sound. And then you'll have also heard of split digraphs, which are basically where the sound is split and there's a letter in between that. So you've got the A as in cake, you've got A, E, I. These are all split digraphs that your children may point out and talk about at home. And it really does blow our mind when we're in class that children pick these words and terms up, because I think when people read them on the screen, they're thinking, oh my goodness, grapheme, digraph, trigraph, split digraph, what on earth? But the children do become really familiar with these because we use these terms all of the time in our lessons. It's a bit like me trying to read dinosaur words, to be honest. So Essential Letters and Sounds was our chosen programme. There are other programmes out there, but our programme for our school is ELS, and we have loved every moment of it. It really has made such an impact already. It's to teach the children about identifying those phonemes, which is the small units of sounds, and then to see those in a written version. So it's transferring being able to read and then also applying that to be able to write as well. And we hope that once they learn to read these words, that they then experience a real joy of books and they can really use these to become independent readers, because that's what we are all aiming for in our schools, for all children to be fluent and independent readers, but also to apply that in their writing as well. So all of these skills come together. So as I said, we do teach phonics every day. We use a very consistent approach. So it's the same setup every lesson. We go through the same routine, and this really helps the children because they know what's coming next. They have the pattern, and routine is essential with children with everything. So we really adopt this program because it starts with the flashcards, then it goes on to do some robot arms, and the children, again, they really enjoy these and they join in and they know what's going to be coming up. We do this every morning. There's a session every single morning, so children have the repetition and it's helping it to get into their long-term memory. That's one of the biggest things that we've noticed as a school by doing this every single day and by repeating lots of things every single day. It's really helping the children to get that long-term memory and the retaining of these skills. We also try to reduce the cognitive load, because by keeping things very similar and very repetitive, it's not always new to them. So often, as you know yourself, if you're picking something up and it's completely new and you didn't know what it was, you would be a bit like, I don't know what to do. And it's that sense of, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to start, how do I fill this in? Whereas because of the setup of these lessons and because of the repetition and the layout of the booklets, the children are just really familiar and they know what to do and they know what the activity means, and it's just about repetition all of the time. And in every single ELS lesson, so every single day, your child is reading. So we are reading with your children every single day, helping them to recognise the sounds, recognise them in words, putting them, getting into sentences, and then building this ability to be able to read. As mentioned before, we do it every day and it starts from the beginning of reception. There are some parts in nursery which I'll touch on when we come to that screen, but from reception your child will be reading and applying themselves every day with phonics. There's lots of opportunities for blending. I'll give some examples of those. So like I did with the fish, another example being my name, coat. So you could go oat, coat, and it's just putting the single phonemes, putting them together as sounds and to build them up into words. And then there's also opportunities in every single lesson to be doing some written work with these. And this is when we build in our letter formation. Again, making sure children learn the correct way to form their letters. With the programme, there's some little rhymes that come with it, so we teach that you use the rhymes to help the children to learn how to form their letters correctly, so that they're not adding. So, for example, if they were doing they wouldn't just do a circle and stick a line on the top for it. We show them to go right around, up to the top and down. Sorry, I'm used to having a whiteboard to model on. It's all doing it in the air at the moment. So this is what I touched on before. This is the ELS progression. So you can see that from the nursery, they learn environmental sounds and percussion, body, rhyme, alliteration. These are all part of being in nursery. So say they were outside and they could hear an aeroplane, they would be talking about those sounds, and it's all teaching the children to use their mouths, because sounds are all to do with using your mouth correctly and being able to say the sounds cleanly. So, for example, if we were saying the sound, we move what I touched on before. We're not going f, we're not doing f like this, and they're learning to sort of put their teeth on their lip and biting down to make that sound. We talk about their breathing. We talk about what it feels like in their mouth to make those sounds. These are the kinds of things that would be happening in nursery. So though you're thinking, oh my goodness, my children's learning to read and write in nursery, yes, actually they are, because this is all building on this before we come into the formal recording of letters and sounds. So nursery's that side of things, learning the environmental sounds and making sounds on their bodies. Moving into reception, that's when this ELS program begins, and this is when we have the daily sessions, and they'll learn. Initially, they learn the first letters, so it's like sat pin is the first letters to learn, and then they start applying those into words. So from reception, you will see a huge impact with children's reading and writing. That continues all through into Key Stage 1, which is where we are working on with your children now. And obviously, as they move through the phases and they come into Key Stage 1, that'll be when they become more fluent in their reading, and they should be able to hopefully recognise more of the sounds, because it's a daily repetition of seeing these sounds all of the time. So, supporting your child at home, this is where we need your help. So, obviously, we do our absolute best between the hours of 9 and 3 that we can do, but it's really sad to hear, this is the statistics, that only 1 in 3 children actually have a bedtime story. Now, I know technology is a huge part of learning and a huge part of life at home. However, reading with your children a bedtime story every night, whereby you can be reading it and they can just be listening to that, one offers a really good routine and settles them for bedtime, but it's teaching them so much to do with reading, looking at the pictures, making predictions. What do you think he'll do next? How do you think the bear felt? Talking about the pictures, seeing if the children can even spot some of the words. It doesn't have to be a formal reading session, because children are tired by the end of the day, but they might be reading. You might be sitting reading, sharing this book with them, and they might go, oh, there's the I sound. We learned that at school. I, night. And then you will be blown away when they start to spot this within their reading. I cannot stress enough the importance of reading with your children at home. Please, please set aside 5 minutes a night just to have some time where you sit together and enjoy a book, because it makes such a difference. My own child, I've got 2 children, one of my children really struggled with reading, but our comprehension, our understanding of books was amazing, and that was simply through just reading with her at night. And now it's built up that she can recognise the letters and sounds and she can read now. But what was really important was that understanding of reading and that love of reading, that want to be able to read. And I don't feel that would have came if I hadn't have invested that time by reading with her. So please do set aside time. It is important. It does also show that if your child sees themselves as a good reader, that when they do leave primary school, that they can actually go on to earn higher money. And it says there, they earn a higher salary in their 40s, which I've just joined that club. So moving on. So again, as well as supporting your child with the reading of your bedtime story, we will be sending some books home. I'm hoping you can see these. I'll hold them up again when it's the screen's a little bit bigger, but your children will be coming home with 2 different books. So we'll be sending home something called a decodable book, which is basically a book that they should be able to read. I'll hold this mastic off then. So this is an example of a decodable book that you may see. On the back of there, again, I'll share this when the screen's a little bit bigger. It shows the sounds that your child is able to read. This is what they'll have learned to read whilst they're in school. So when they can come home, they'll be able to break down the words and actually read this themselves. They will need to do it more than once a week. We don't expect just to read it once and then put it aside. We're asking you to read this book at least 4 times a week, because by doing that, it'll build up their fluency by going through the same sounds. And often when I'm in class, I'll say to my children, read that sentence again now that you've worked out the tricky words. Do it again, and the fluency is unreal, and that gives them the sense of achievement, that sense of being able to read. So please do invest time to do that 4 times a day. 4 times a week. They'll also be bringing home a book which we are calling a sharing book. This is a book banded book. It's got they're in colours in school. Oh, hang on, I think I might have knocked something. I thought I'd knocked something there. So this is a book banded book. It's got different colours on it, and we pitch this to what we think is the most suitable for your children. However, your child may need support with some of the words in this book, so don't feel like, oh, they're struggling, they can't do it. That's for you to dive in and for you to point out and say, oh, let's look at that word together. What do we think that word could be? Let's look at the pictures. What do we think? Let's look at the sounds that we do know. Let's break it down, so that your child's then able to give an educated guess at the word, but then still struggling, you can say, oh, it's the word share, and then you can tell them, and then when they read the sentence again, they'll hopefully pick that up. So this is a sharing book that you can do together. When we're sending these books home, we're hoping that there'll be decoding, breaking down the sounds. I'll go through all those terms a bit clearer at the end. And again, fluency just being able to read it more quickly. And then the final step of reading is to use expression, just to not always be talking in a very one tone, and what we used to call, when I first started teaching, barking at text, where they just say the words, but adding in that expression. And that's really important, especially when it's dialogues, talking between the characters. You'd expect them to, if they were like, oh no, you'd expect them to be changing their voice to be going, oh no, said mum. And just adding that expression, that just is another part of reading skills. Sorry, Mr. Face, move my mouse again. I'm not used to having 2 screens. So, an orthographic map. What we mean by an orthographic map is what we're trying to aim for your children to be able to do. Basically, what that means is children to be able to read the word within a context. So this is where looking at pictures and things also help. I gave an example with my class today because we've been learning the air sound, which is the making the air. And we looked at the word tear and tear. So obviously, as adults, you will know tear and tear, they're spelled exactly the same. So my children were like, well, how do you know the difference, Mrs. Coates? How do you know which word to use? And this is when I talked to them about the fact that it's all to do with the word within the sentence and the word that would make sense within that sentence. So I had said to them, if they had a sentence like, the boy was feeling very sad and a came from their eye, I said that would have been the word tear, because that would fit within that sentence. I said, or if they had another example whereby they were, the boy was running along and he fell onto the ground and there was a tear in his clothes, then tear would fit into that sentence. So I said that's knowing whether it's tear or tear by reading the whole sentence and picking the word that matches. And that's what we're talking about in this slide when we're talking about having a strong orthographic map, picking up what makes sense in that context of letters, context of words. And that, again, is what we need for children to be able to read fluently, to be able to just blend the words, put the words together, and to be not just what we went before about barking at text, saying each word sound by sound. Talked about before, let's see. So this is what I mentioned.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can.
Sorry.
I'm just asking, is this going to be put on the Facebook page afterwards? It's just I'm putting that up shortly.
Do you mean the slides? The slides are going to
Yeah.
be shared, but also I think they're recording this video, so it is being recorded.
That's perfect, thanks.
Thank you. So this is what I mentioned earlier about pronouncing pure sounds. So this is really essential for avoiding that schwa of the on the end of it. Again, please watch the video. There's a lady on there, and she goes through each of the letters and sounds, and she goes through pronouncing them really, really cleanly. I can't stress enough how invaluable that is to watch. We share with the children, and the children see it, but then obviously they see us doing that in practice as well. So please spend some time having a little look at that. That's on our school.
The website, and we'll share the links this afternoon.
Finally, I'm just going to talk about some of the terms that your children may be coming home and talking about, and so that you have some understanding of what these mean. So some of the terms we use, we talk about, there's some speech bubbles here, so it's like thinking about what do you think the sound might be. The arrow is to talk about when we stretch sounds, so we elongate sounds. So say I was doing car, I would go k, r, k, r, and I'm really stretching out the words so that they can sort of hear that being stretched. So it's not just, it's really elongated to stretch words out. One of my favourites, and we do this every morning, is robot arms. With this, we break down into sounds and into phonemes. So we've got, for example, fishing. I would go ing, and then the children have to put those, they copy and they go ing, and then they put that together to try to hear what the word is. That's a real part of reading. It's breaking it down into sounds and then putting it back together again. We call that segmenting and blending. Segmenting, breaking it down, blending, putting it back together. Which brings me on to the hands, which is when we say blending hands. So we can segment it, break it down, but then we blend it back together. And again, these are terms that we use with the children. So if they come across a word that they're not sure on, we can say, let's segment it, let's break it down, but then also let's blend it, put it back together. We also use robot arms with children to try to get them to segment and blend. These are just all new terms that we're learning and children are using in class. So I'm sorry I've gone through that quite quickly. I'm going to try now to make the screen a little bit bigger, show you a few more of the resources that we're using with your children in class, and then by all means just ask away, and I'll try my best to answer as many questions as I can.
Right, so I'll stop sharing that one.
Just get my technical help here.
And then that means that everybody should be seeing just you a little bit bigger. In fact, I'll have a look on my phone and see.
Right.
Yeah,
so I'll just hold up a few of the resources that we use with your children in class. So as I was saying about the routine, the morning routine, so all of our lessons start with flashcards. So these are the kind of things that we hold up to the children, and they would say A, because they go together to make A. And we're going through those, and each of the cards have like a little picture on the back, which is essential because if we look at, I find we did this one last week in my class. So you will see, bear with me, here they are. So here we have two cards which are exactly the same. Now, when they're in reception, they learn that this is ch, as in chicken, so put in reception. But when they come in this further into Key Stage 1, they'll be learning that this has got an alternative sound to it. But it's also, they're exactly the same, but there are actually two sounds. So we teach that this is the k, 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 as in school. So there's a picture on the back which shows a school or istra, and we really emphasize that k, k, k. So this is k sound, and then this is the other one, which again can make the sh sound. So we say sh, f. It has a m, a sh, in, sh, and we really stress that being the sh sound. And there's a picture of a chef on the back for the children. So then they get used to knowing that when I show this, we're going k, and when I'm showing this, we're going shh. And they just learn through the repetition of doing these every day that these two can make, these two cards that can actually make two different sounds. That's an example of the flashcards. In class, on our walls, we have a display which has got all of the sounds that your children will be learning. And I'll just hold this up as well. This is a mat which they'll have next to them. So if they're ever doing a piece of written work, they've got their sound mat next to them. So if they were unsure and they said, oh, I can't remember what the k sound is, they can look on their map to find that. And it's got the little picture card next to it. So these are on their desks with the children as a support and aid. And of course, we can provide any of these for you if you wish to have them at home. Please just ask a member of staff, because we can give you those if you're doing a piece of work at home and you'd prefer these, just ask away. In class, after the children have done the whole class carpet session, they have a booklet that they go and work in, and that's what I was saying about it being the repetition of now it's about time to go to your book. And in these booklets, they have skills where they have to write the words, they have to read the word and match it to the picture. They have passages that they have to read. So these are their phonics workbooks, which they work in each day. And then finally, you may see some of these appearing in your children's yellow logs. So the logs that we record their reading books that are going home in, we've also stuck our new harder to read and spell words. That's what HRS stands for. So our harder to read and spell words, you previously will have known them as keywords, but we are using the term of harder to read and spell because these words are harder to read and spell. They're not necessarily things that we can just know the sounds of. They have to know how to read and spell. So for example, the word was, if they were to do that as was, they would say was, and it's not was. They have to learn that it's was. And these are listed on here, and these will be stuck into your child's log. Staff have already highlighted what children can read and what children can spell, so you'll be able to see where your child is and how much progress they're making with those. There's a set for reception, and there's a smaller set for year 1 words as well. But for now, children all the way up to year 2, 3, 4 will have copies of these, because these are whole school word systems that we're working on at the moment. So look out for those in your child's booklet. I think that's everything, but please feel free to ask away. I'm not sure how this is going to. I'm going to do like a hand up or just a shout out.
I think.
Is anybody still there?
People are well behaved.
But they're very.
Unmute themselves if they wish to have, and then I'll stop the recording so that people can watch the link.
So if anyone's feeling brave, I know it's a bit on the spot to ask, but if anybody does wish to ask anything and they would like to ask, please fire away, or you're welcome to catch staff after school if it's a more comfortable environment than shouting out on a screen. So does anybody have anything they'd like to ask?
I tell you what, I shall stop the recording.
Ah, that's a good idea, and then they might.
So we'll do that.
So you're not being recorded, which takes the pressure off.
Yeah. Stop.